There are many games based on cartoons, but perhaps the metaverse, or rather, the franchise that boasts the most games is Looney Tunes, at least in the West. In this regard, there are all kinds of games: sports, puzzles, platformers, and more. They range from mediocre to passable, with some good ones sprinkled in, spanning a wide array of consoles and eras. And it's no wonder, since these characters have been alongside humanity for a good part of the 20th century. However, with the passage of time and the reign of political correctness, they have lost their legendary status. But personally, the game that best exemplifies the feeling these cartoons radiated, especially during their golden age, is Bugs Bunny: Lost in Time. As I mentioned at the start, this universe has passed through many consoles, and at the same time, its games have been produced under the license of many different companies. On this occasion, it was produced by a Canadian company called Behavior Interactive, and it was released in 1999 for the PlayStation and PC. It was published by Infogrames, which is important because it's a French company that made the decision to translate this game. As a result, it includes French, English, and Spanish, both in dubbing and interface, in both its European and American versions. Everything begins when Bugs Bunny is digging to travel to a paradise-like place called Pismo Beach. However, after taking a wrong turn in Albuquerque, he ends up in a warehouse and finds a machine containing an orange liquid, which he mistakes for a carrot juice vending machine. It is actually a time machine, and upon activating it, he is taken to a place called Nowhere. There he finds Merlin, who tells him that he is lost in time and that to return to his own period, he must collect clock symbols scattered across different eras. By gathering a certain number, he will be able to go back to his time. After the explanation, Merlin leaves, though Bugs calls him a nerd several times. Or at least that's what I hear, since in some places he mentions that he refers to him as Mayor. The game is a platformer whose main objective is collecting clocks, which are scattered across different levels throughout the game. To access subsequent levels, you need to acquire a certain number of these collectibles to unlock the next one, and so on until you reach the maximum required to finish the game. We also have a secondary collectible, Golden Carrots. These also have a limited number in each level and are used to unlock special levels, where the same collectibles can also be found. In the game, we can jump and kick things as a form of defense. We can also descend using our ears, which form a propeller to let us glide down gently. Though while doing so, you can't correct your course. We can carry boxes to stack them and reach places we can't get to with a single jump, throw objects, and activate special ones. These help us solve certain puzzles and have a time limit for use. Once that runs out, they disappear and return to their original spot. Additionally, we can walk stealthily, which is useful for crossing flimsy platforms that collapse if you pass too quickly, as well as for striking enemies who haven't noticed our presence or sneaking past them while they sleep. We can roll to hit enemies or to enter tight spaces. We can climb various ropes, chains, and so on. And we can also burrow underground and move beneath the surface. To do this, we must enter a hole and move within the terrain's limits, only being able to exit through another hole. Almost all levels share the same basic gameplay. We go from the starting point, traverse a scenario with different things, and some collectibles solve various puzzles, move to the next screen, and so on until we reach the goal, which is usually a hole we have to enter to finish the level. However, in others, we get racing levels where we have a time limit to reach the end, and we increase our clock count to have a better chance of completing it. There are also scenarios where we must dodge different obstacles while we move automatically, very similar to games like Pepsi Man. In some places, there will be a frame with a special icon. In these, we must activate them by saying the magic words, which Merlin teaches us in certain levels. The problem with this is that you learn them late in the game, and you only need to use them on a few occasions. So, they feel like a useless addition that only serves to complete the game 100% and adds nothing to the gameplay. The levels are very varied and are set in different time periods, which gives them aesthetic differences and, above all, a unique feel. This allows each one to have different mechanics. For example, in the 1930s, we are in a city under the control of the Italian-American Mafia, moving through different buildings like a hotel, a bank, and a factory. In the prehistoric era, there are dinosaurs that serve as platforms, cavemen, and so on. In total, there are 5 different eras. Personally, the one that feels very different from the rest is the future, which features a space-like, modern setting where Marvin is the villain. This location has a higher difficulty level and focuses more on a kind of labyrinth. Many levels are based on a specific cartoon Short of the Rabbit, and in my opinion, the humor is very true to the source. That is, we see how he tricks the other characters who normally want to ruin his plans. Our character's health is represented by carrots. He can withstand 6 hits, and to recover from damage, we just need to grab any carrots scattered around the level. These also serve as currency. When we reach the maximum of 99, we can buy something in the home level of the era. We don't have lives. Instead, when we die, we simply return to the nearest checkpoint we've touched, or if we haven't touched any, to the beginning of the level. No matter how many times you die here, there's no game over screen. To access the different eras, we must get on the time machine and enter it, then go into what I call the level room, where we see the levels we've unlocked or the requirements needed to enter them. The game doesn't have autosave, but we can save in 2 different moments. The first is after finishing a level, when Merlin appears and allows us to create a save point. But we can also call him at the level's checkpoints to save. In both cases, he records your progress simply by smelling his armpit. And if you happen to miss something in a level, when you re-enter and find it, you can leave the level without finishing it and you'll keep it. The enemies are iconic to each era, and in some, we see lesser-known characters from the cartoon. Some are defeated with a simple kick, while others need to be stomped on while jumping in order to kick them. However, there are also clones with a different appearance but the same attack patterns. The bosses are usually better-known characters, like Yosemite Sam in his pirate role, for example. We have to defeat them multiple times. This is where the cartoonish nature really shines, as we have to perform certain actions that will strongly remind you of their TV counterparts, like returning explosive toy boats, throwing Martian pills, or changing the hunting signs so that Daffy gets a shotgun blast instead. The game can be seen in 2 ways, as a standard platformer or as a good adaptation of the cartoons. It's not perfect from the first point of view, mainly because of the jumps. The character jumps awkwardly, and you won't know exactly how far the jump will reach or even if it will stay on course, especially in tight spaces. You'll try to correct your trajectory with the ear propeller, which only makes you fall faster. Aside from this, the difficulty isn't very high and it's accessible to all audiences. I would recommend it to anyone who likes the cartoon and video games. That's probably the main appeal for owning it. If you want to have a funny time and enjoy collecting things, this is a good option. I wouldn't recommend it to people who don't like the Spanish from Spain dubbing. I personally have no problem with it. And in fact, I'm glad to see that back then, dubbed games were starting to be released in the Americas, which was rare. However, many people don't like that accent, so they can switch it to English with the drawback that everything will be in that language. It can feel monotonous, especially during fights with enemies, or also because of the character's lack of progression, since we have the same attacks the whole time. The story is just an excuse to see Bugs Bunny in action. But if you've ever seen his main stories, it's the same thing, putting the character in a context and watching how he manages to come out on top by humiliating anyone who stands in his way or tries to eat him. A game that could be considered run-of-the-mill. But if you look at it from the perspective of representing its universe, it stands out, something not all games achieve. With comedy in its own style and acceptable gameplay that ends up being very intuitive, that is Bugs Bunny, Lost in Time. I hope you liked the video. If so, hit the like button. If you know someone who might enjoy it, share it on your social media, and don't forget to subscribe if you like the channel. If you have any questions, suggestions, or simply want to comment on something, don't hesitate to do so in the comments box below. Also, if you're a big fan of this channel, hit the notification bell to be among the first to see the videos. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you next time. Bye.